Hello, so here we are. The last vlog video really. There's a velocity of now, tonight on Beyond Room 313 at 10 p.m. UK Irish time. But a 2 hour special. But the last video of 2022. And even though the year went fast, someone had posted a video the other day of me just ranting here in the car about the Canadian truckers and supporting them, and how someone had taken that clip out and they played it in Ottawa at the protest through the loudspeakers. And the person sent me the video. That was only back in February 2022. Yet that seems like so long ago. So although the year flew by really quickly, my God, it was packed. I've nowhere gotten near 50% of the things I wanted to do this year because there was just so much demands on my time. I also was really sick, not really sick, but sick over the last 2 weeks or so with this bloody fucking virus. But that's how you build your immune system up, and that dented a lot of plans that I had to do. A few things coming up before Christmas, but I'll get to them after Christmas. But after the New Year. But still lingering. But I'm just, tonight for New Year's Eve, I'm just going to get an Indian takeaway and have a few beers, and I'm not going to do anything mad. But yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting. I suppose I'm not really interested in the year-end review that much, except I'm really, well, just about everything we in the alternative predicted is happening. I mean, the skydive thing is out of control now, to the point now where there's pilots' unions are now wanting to take the Biden administration in America to court. You've had collapse of the airline industry in the United States of America, and that's directly because of, skydive and skydive type events. 30% of train drivers in Ireland have been on long-term sickness. That's because of what? Well, because of, needlecraft. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, you have situations where bus services have collapsed all over the place because bus drivers are all out sick. And because a lot of these guys are union, they're philosophically motivated to take this experimental treatment in order to prove their devotion to the regime. Just like lefties in general. Lefties only care about the state. They don't care about anyone else. And not even their own children or families or anything. It's the regime, the state. And that nowadays, the regime and the state these days is major corporations. I mean, you have to the fanatical love and devotion your average socialist today has for mega corporations like Pfizer and so on. It's touching, and it's beautiful to see that in this day and age, religion is still so deeply held, and religious faith is so deeply held in such a degree that when people say, well, there's no religious devotion and faith in this world that there used to be, and you just point to socialists and their enormous love for transglobalist corporations, they will literally die for them. In fact, they are dying for them right now. But anyway, I digress. Predictions for the years ahead. Okay. First of all, Bohemians will be lucky if they don't get relegated. We have a shit team. That's just my personal thing this year. We don't have the money. The club put all the money into woke. They didn't put any money into buying players. They don't have the players. All the best players every year get bought by other clubs. And we have a decent manager. And Nutsy is back from Linfield as the director of football, and at the club. But the club is too woke. I mean, when new players sign, they sign on a thing saying Bohemian Football Club Dublin, and there's a rainbow flag right in the middle of the club's crest. So they won't go anywhere this year. Forget about qualifying for Europe. They'll be lucky. They'll be lucky if they fight relegation. Anyway, that's that one thing. That's one prediction I can clearly make. Second prediction, we're looking at the end of science. So, I've been predicting this for a while, that science is over. Science is done as a philosophy, as one of the pursuits of Western world. And it's over. It's finished. And things like evidence-based medicines, and that's all gone. Evidence-based science is gone. And it was killed by science. I mean, the whole thing of trust the science is the most unscientific thing you can possibly say, because that's not what science is or how it works. And to have things like, people like Greta Thunberg being held up as role models of great scientific thought. And people with like PhDs out their arses saying, no, she's wrong, being laughed at. And that happened with the needlecraft and everything else as well. It's over. It's gone. It's done. And I know there's a whole thing of he who pays the piper calls the tune. And I do feel sorry for decent scientists who want to go about their discoveries and stuff. But this all began, you know how this all began? It all began when somehow the term scientist meant you were an expert in a kind of a politically philosophical pursuits. So, for instance, if you were a scientist and you worked in chemical engineering, and you asked them, is man-made climate change as bad as they say? Of course it is. I'm a scientist. But you work in chemical engineering. I'm a scientist. A scientist works in, anything in quantum physics. Is man-made global warming the problem they say it is? Of course it is. Why? I'm a scientist, I know. And then they don't know nothing about this stuff. And that's now all across everything. It automatically feels that they have no, for instance, if I want to know about marine biology, I will trust the word of a marine biology scientist. More than most, because I know he has, but off camera, a lot of people tell you the truth about things. If I want to know about astronomy, I'll consult an astronomer. But we live in an age where anyone who has a degree in advanced, like the Bill Nye factor, Bill Nye is now, Bill Nye played an enormous part in the destruction of science as a field. And, there was the famous thing where in his old show, someone found a clip of him talking about how men and women are born with two chromosomes, X and Y. And then in his new show, he goes, gender is not male or female, it's a spectrum. And where do chromosomes go? And then he had this chick behind him on stage going, mass, sex, junk, this kind of thing. It's over. Science is over. Don't you scientists come to me and tell me that you're clever and smart when you've allowed your field to deteriorate like this. Don't you, any of you, come to me and say, well, what do you know about this? You're not a scientist. Let me tell you, we live in an age where, they gladly proclaim science has rooted all superstitions and irrationality from mankind. Followed up with, men can get pregnant by the same people. That's where science is now. If science doesn't have some kind of reformation inside it, I can't see any future for anyone. Now, there'll always be people who are tinkering and scientifically testing things and trying things out in their own kind of natural philosophy way, and that will always continue. But science is probably, science is now becoming what the Catholic clergy were. But by this time next year, I'm going to guarantee you, and you can take this one to the bank, that many people will be talking about scientists, and it's very unfortunate because there's decent scientists out there, will be talking about scientists the way we now talk about Catholic clergy and the paedophile scandals. Where people automatically now think Catholic clergy, paedophile. People in the future will think scientist, whack jobs who foisted this terrible chemical experiment on humanity, whack jobs who said that men could get pregnant, whack jobs who, I watched a video there today that Tina sent, and it was a guy, it's on Man Salty Crackers channel, and it's men putting frozen orange juice, no, it gets worse. They drink large amounts of water and take laxatives, so these trans men can pretend they're having period cramps. And it gets worse. They put frozen V8 tomato juice up their bottoms. It melts to stimulate menstrual bleeding. Now you'd say to yourself, that would be like what Eurotrash used to be. The odd freak they'd pull out here and there to show them for a laugh. The odd nut job. But we live in a world where those types are not only protected by law, but they have the entire body of scientific strength, or whatever you want to call it, worldview, government, NGOs, the mass media, and everything else behind, and laws protecting them, protecting their mental illness. And if you turn around and say, a guy who shoves frozen juice in Ireland right now, technically I can go to jail for saying a guy who shoves frozen tomato juice up his hole and takes laxatives and bottles of water and to simulate period cramps and menstrual bleeding is a fucking nutcase who's not a woman. I can technically go to prison for that, and that's what we're up against. I mean, that's what that and that's what we're up against. It's all based on the fact of what? Well, how do I know what a real man is? I'm not a scientist. I remember that yoke that was running for the U.S. Supreme Court. Can you define a woman? I'm not a biologist. Science, you're finished. It's over. You will not survive this. You've made the ultimate pact with the devil. For it was bad enough that the corporations took complete control, but when you have the likes of Nature magazine, which was it was almost seen as infallible in terms of you couldn't get the amount of peer-reviewed documents and the strict editorial policy, openly caught lying over the transmission rates of the ping pong. I mean, what's happening to science now is like what happened when all the pedos and nonsense were all found in the Catholic Church, and you'll never come back from that. You can sit there and say, well, they weren't all involved. Of course they weren't all involved. I know lots of priests who were lovely people and great men, and lots of very nice nuns as well. But the problem is that stigma is there for good now, and people don't trust the Catholic Church anymore, the clergy in the Vatican, and so on. And and I say that ironically on the day that the real Pope is dead, Pope Benedict. He's been sick for years. This Pope, you see, what happened was we had two popes. This Francis guy was kind of a coup led by the Jesuits. That's why he was saying things like, we don't take the Neelcraft, you won't go to heaven. And it's that kind of nonsense. And this guy Benedict got an awful time before he got sick and had to leave. He probably was a nice guy, we don't know. But anyway, he's dead now. And so we don't really have a pope at the moment. But that's just the chaos that goes on. And you have to be very, and I know the average scientist had no say in this. The ordinary guy is working in some field and suddenly finds out. But it's time for scientists to have a bit of chutzpah and integrity to say, no, we're not going to be a part of this woke agenda. You're not going to change the scientific method that we've had since the Enlightenment, since Robert Boyle or whoever it was, actually an Irishman, by the way, who invented the chemistry and invented science, actually. And you're not going to do that. Not in our name. Until that happens, to see someone, journals like Nature fall apart like that, it's staggering. And, it's all part of my belief that you'll see, I'm going to go into depth in this tonight on the velocity of now, but there's something, it's the movie They Live. We're the guys with the glasses and we're seeing what's really out there. And so I think science is going to get a terrible reputation by the end of the year. And you won't have the same arrogance and people, like you're already seeing videos. I saw a video the other day where Brian Cox, the gorgeous Brian Cox, the fucking gorgeous, absolutely fucking gorgeous Brian Cox. Yeah. Where he was talking about there was no such things as ghosts. No such things as ghost. The comments are switched off, and I'm knowing more and more. I'm looking at more and more videos by him, Attenborough, Greta Thunberg, and other celebrity scientists where the comments have been shut off, which is showing that the backlash against science has begun. People are now saying that it's so fundamentally corrupt. It's gone beyond, corporations who pays the piper calls. It's gone beyond that. But how a scientist can invoke the scientific method and say men can have babies. That's the end. It's over. It's gone. It's over. It's no longer science. It's a religion. It's over. It's done. And there's nothing they can do or say or laws they can pass to make reality unreality and unreality reality. It just can't be done. They can't. Next they'll be saying things like the laws of gravity, the laws of that. Gravity don't work. If you throw a ball up in the air, it keeps going up. This is where we're going with science. Because of some some woke imperative says balls have to keep flying up. They'll do it. It's outrageous what's going on. So that's my main prediction as after Christmas, it's already happening. The great the winter of all the darkest shadows. They're dropping left, right, and center. And I know people are saying, "Well, I feel really bad about it because I have family members who totally fell for the whole thing." And while on one hand I understand that, but on the other hand, it's like a man, Dr. Campbell. Was he really that thick, or was he pretending to be? Was he playing us an all-sun game? That's another thing. A man, Joseph Campbell, has a weird cult following. People who like, if you who like, he's the ultimate example of a red pill. He's what? I mean, I'm still I don't, he's a guy who told everyone to go and get the needlecraft, and they were supposed to believe that this common sense and intelligence that he had back then doesn't matter now because he's now got a new sense of intelligence. What kind of fucking intelligence is that to begin with? How come me, a fucking idiot, a gobshite, a fucking nobody from the fucking a slum in the north side of Dublin, who's done, just a fucking asshole? How come I and other gobshites like me knew that this stuff was dangerous, and we weren't going to take it, and we, and he's the ultimate red pill. No, he's not. Maybe he's just trying to save his own ass now. Or maybe he was leading people on. I don't know. I just don't. But there's a weird cult around him. Don't you dare say anything about him. He's wonderful. What? What? He changed his mind. It shows that he's a real he's a real person. But it was so blatantly obvious that this thing was as dodgy as fuck right from the start. It's no use after you've, but that's a classic. And he's a doctor of nursing. He wasn't, and then he's held up as a PhD scientist. He's an expert on virology now. And it goes on, and that's another example of like, I'm a scientist in one field, therefore I'm an expert in all fields, and that's what kills science. And he's a classic example of it. So that's what will replace science. I would love to see something like natural philosophy come back, where you can't, science has to acknowledge that there's other forces in the universe that are beyond the material, that so on, but they'll never admit that. I mean, you're talking about climate, we're a tiny dot in this solar system, let alone a speck in the galaxy, and all the forces out there in space impacting on this planet are discounted from the climate models. The big ball of fire in the sky barely matters, but a few cow farts does. Science is over. And people have to start standing up to science. I mean, when people, the days like, not exactly college material, we have to say, no, I'm glad I didn't go to university because all it produces are fucking idiots who are unemployable and think men can have periods. Are you some kind of scientist? Thank God I'm not some kind of scientist. I'm still capable of free thought. If you want to be like that, to go back to the Middle Ages and go live with the cardinals and popes. And that's what we have to be like that. We have to start talking. Science has this. They love this thing like there's a skepticism about science that's coming to the fore, and it's very worrying. And it comes out of like vaccine skeptical groups, and it's like, no, it's called common sense. It's called criticism. It's called the ability to think for oneself. That is not a worry unless you're a dogmatic entity, and that proves your behavior proves you're a dogmatic entity. It's not very, if anything, if you're a real scientist and you were to say there's growing concerns about science and the public are not trusting science as they used to, as a scientist, if you're a real scientist, what the first thing you should say is, good. That means we have to actually be more diligent in our scientific research and papers. But no, they're like in priest now. And you see these conferences all over the world. We need to pass laws. We need to pass laws so people who do not want to get an injection of an experimental substance, they can be arrested and made forced to have it, because it's really worrying how people are not automatically trusting science. That's not science, motherfucker. That's dogma. That's dogma. And so this whole thing of like, science must be protected at every... No. That's like saying all the paedophile priests should have been all protected. Why? Because they got a frock and a fucking Bible in their hand. It's unbelievable, really. This whole, there's no other group on this earth that has had that level of arrogance. I can even begin to imagine. Maybe the clergy in the Middle Ages, but that's about it. So you'll see after Christmas a massive, especially with the summer time, you will see people literally, the people who are scientists by the end of the year, be going, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I wash dishes in a restaurant." "I heard he's a scientist." "No, I'm not a scientist." "No." They'll be like, well, not maybe not in this year, but in a few years. But 2023 will be the year that people will say to scientists. And in Ireland, we have a classic one, Luke O'Neill. Luke O'Neill is the one you look at and you go, that's the fucking guy whose public policy is based on. And then you see in every country is like that, and you all have characters like that in every country, and then you realize, Jesus Christ, the one in England is probably like Campbell, but I mean you have them in all countries, and suddenly people realize this science thing has kind of led us up the fucking garden path, hasn't it? And you only have yourselves to blame. I know corporations took over many fields and things like that. I do have sympathy in that regard. But how someone who's looking through a telescope at a fucking on the other side of the universe, on the other side of the solar system, then takes his eye away from the piece and makes a video on YouTube saying, "Don't forget to get your boosters. And if you don't get them, you're against science. And I know because I'm a scientist." What? What? And so there'll also be other questions being asked, like where did all these vials of needlecraft get made so quickly, so fast? And it's starting to, it's obvious answer to that is they already had it all ready to go. And you're going to see a lot of that. I think that's one of the reasons some people who have been needlecrafted haven't fallen apart, is because they've been actually needlecrafted with things that could be years old, and the efficacy is gone from them. And so that's a big one. So next year will be the year where scientists will be like they'll get fanatical though. They'll be they'll get more and more vicious, and you'll have like you'll have like Brian Cox pleading on TV. Like I always said about Cox, if his child dies, don't give him any sympathy, because people like him, that's just a lost collection of DNA. There was no soul there. There was nothing. It was just an object. And that's the kind of people we've allowed to. You see, that's why you can have crazy lunatics pushing tomato juice up their holes. This is why you can have that and simulate periods, because of this notion of like the science guy is infallible. Bill Nye, they're all nut jobs. They're all crazy. They're all. And even isn't Bill Nye an engineer or something? He isn't even a science. And I saw a film recently where he played a top scientist in the film as an actor, and it was like almost included in the movie to make you think he was an incredible scientist in real life. It was almost like a cynical mind gaslighting game they were playing, and that guy who has a degree in engineering. But it's amazing, That's one of my predictions, that the science is over next year. Another prediction is that I do feel that maybe people like me will drop in profile. There's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, the seeming emergency of the last 3 years from the alternative viewpoint of things will wane. It already has begun to wane. And I don't think I'll get as many subscriptions or views to my videos. I think I'll probably just probably from like next spring, in the next few years after, I wouldn't be surprised if my profile just kind of vanishes and peters out. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, I'm not bothered by it or anything. I mean, that's just the way the world goes. And I think, and also because, I think people have developed a self-confidence in themselves by, sharing this information in people like me. There's no kind of future for people like me changing society, other than like helping encourage other people to move into the parallel society, which will bring on the second Renaissance. But that will happen. That will happen. De facto, that will happen by default, because the global situation is so psychotically unmanageable now that even Klaus Schwab said that he doubts the Great Reset will happen even if someone like Biden had 2 terms. It's been pushed back for years. The Rona and the situation in Ukraine. That's another thing that I predict for next year. It's already begun. That the term of calling someone far right or a racist will just be laughed at. You know, there was a time where, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, if you called someone far right or a racist, they were like, whoa, that was like a kind of a spell word. You could actually frighten them to shut up. I think people, shut up. But I think the East Wall thing in Dublin and Ireland particularly played a huge part in that. And also, I think the people are getting more and more wise to NGOs and see this parasitic, socially destroying, uh, not semi, but cohesive, not cohesive, what's the word? Complementary government that runs in tandem with official government. You're going to get people more wise to that, and they'll see the role that these NGOs played in killing people with the needlecraft and stuff like that, and promoting these ideas of if a man shoves his frozen tomato juice up his bumhole, and that's the same thing as a biological woman having a period. There's no difference. That's been a big part of it as well. Because in Ireland, a small country like Ireland, gives something like nearly €7 billion a year to NGOs just to brainwash and change the culture. Could you imagine what it's like in somewhere like Britain or Germany or Canada, USA? Jesus, it's not even worth thinking about. But the sheeple will continue to deteriorate. There's no hope there. Those of you, I still find it amazing that people think it's going to be some kind of mass awakening. Firstly, I don't want those assholes waking up next to me. And second, so, just get them away from me. So there's a lot of that kind of thing. A lot of people I know, including myself, don't go out much anymore, if at all. It's only a necessity to go out. It's because you just look what fuckers out there. The fuckers out there, And that kind of thing. So we've had a bit of a mild spell here, and the whole area around my gaff smells of wild garlic. That distinct wild garlic smell. And that's really good for cooking as well. So we're getting a really early run on the wild garlic, that pungent garlic aroma, and so it grows in Ireland in the form of leaves, the wild stuff, and so those Aegis who say like the ancient Irish didn't have garlic in their diet. It's fucking all around them. But anyway, so look. You know I fucking love you cunts. Big time. You fucking know that, right? You've been so good to me, especially in the last 3 years since this shit started, okay? So you don't have to ever worry or think about that element that I don't fucking appreciate your fucking you cunts. I absolutely fucking adore you, right? Secondly, that's what we carry with us into 2023. That we did find fellowship and a tribe and like-minded people and decency among us that carried us this far already and will continue to carry us into the future as long as we live. And that's no mean feat when you think about it. That's pretty impressive considering all the shit they put against us in the last 1,000+ days. That's fucking amazing, right? And I really do feel that creativity is only getting more and more powerful. And more like, more and more potent in terms of building this parallel society. I think a lot of the things that we face to try and destroy us have destroyed themselves in the process. Because at the end of the day, I'm not pushing a dogma. You're not pushing a philosophy. None of us are really interested in politics. I hate fucking politics at the core of my being. Some lady like Mel, she meant well, asked me if would I be interested in running for office. I'd rather be fucking, I'd rather shove frozen fucking tomato juice up me hole than do that, and that kind of thing. So, Happy New Year, you gorgeous fucking bastards. And I'll see you after New Year's Day. Don't forget tonight, the velocity of now on BR313 And I'm starting a new 14 show, which is Psychic Weather will be included in, where a lady called Sarah Mondaini, and you've seen her in one of my shows, January sometime. So, you know, cut down on alcohol. It's a lot of people who drink small amounts of alcohol seem to be having bad hangovers and this kind of thing, no matter what age they are. So maybe there's a cosmic thing to that. And as you go into 2023, say, I survived the demonic cosmic horror alien attack on the human race. And I'm still here, and I'm still in the underground, and I'm still surviving, and I'm still having a laugh, and I'm still sanguine gnosis. Love yous all.